Experience the priestly blessing live straight from the Western Wall. Now, who was here first? Jews or Arabs? All this today on a power-packed, info-full show right here on the Joshua and Caleb Report.
In a world plagued with anti-Israel propaganda, Paul Yavel presents the Joshua and Caleb Report, a positive voice of truth straight from Israel's heartland.
In a world of negativity and fake news, every Christian should be connected to the life and positivity that Israel brings to the world. I'm Luke Hilton here with Joshua Waller on the Mount of Blessing deep in the biblical heartland of Israel on a beautiful, beautiful spring day in the middle of the holiday of Passover. So super exciting. Josh went to Jerusalem yesterday for the first holiday celebration in over a year, I think. So that was actually really awesome. Israel has been locked down so much, and this is the first feast, first festival season where they haven't completely locked the country down. So there was actually thousands and thousands of people in Jerusalem celebrating the feast of Passover and Unleavened Bread. And yesterday was actually Firstfruits too. Got to ascend the Temple Mount with Rabbi Yehuda Glick and my family and friends, and that was an amazing experience. We actually have a clip from that we're going to play here in just a second. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube, make sure you do that. You got to ring the bell too. You got to do both those things, subscribe and ring the bell. And leave us a comment. I love talking to you guys in the comments, and I love debating, kind of getting into it lately, so that's been fun. You can still listen on the podcast platforms, although all of the content is not on podcast platforms. So if you're listening there, you may want to check out the YouTube channel, because sometimes we have more content on YouTube because we're showing videos and things like that. But you can subscribe free on podcast platforms, wherever you listen to podcasts. And of course, we have lots more content and other shows, all completely free. But you have to subscribe at joshuaandcaleb.com. Join completely free. And of course, if you'd like to join our team of Patreon members, you can do so at patreon.com/Joshua and Caleb. And that helps us directly produce more and more shows. We're talking about what our next adventure show, I'm calling it adventure shows because I think that's pretty fun. We're planning our next adventure show here in the heartland of Israel coming up very soon. And by becoming a Patreon member, you can help us produce more content like that. Josh, we talked about today, of course, everybody wants to know what's happening with the election. So we said, of course, we have to give the update. Unfortunately,
There's not one.
There's no update.
Just none.
And that's because the right-wing bloc won 66 seats or something like that, or 65. But a lot of those people, or some of those people, have vowed to never sit in a government with Bibi Netanyahu. So that brings the people that might sit with him down to just 59 seats. And of course, you need a minimum of 61 to form a government. On the opposite side, it's probably going to be difficult for the other side, like the left-wing bloc, to form a coalition, because you've got Arabs, and then you have center-left parties, and then you have center parties, right-wing parties, and of course all those people don't want to sit together either. So that's pretty much it.
And your big news is that you got Bibi with 30 seats just on his own Likud party, and the next party closest to it, which is the left-wing party, is 17 seats.
19 seats, yeah.
So 17 seats. So you got to, it's really a
you have a lot of small, there's a lot of parties that won 8 seats and 7 seats and 6 seats. So you got, in the United States, you have Republicans and Democrats. Here in Israel, you have about 15 parties. And there was one party, the Likud, that won 30. The next one won 17. And then after that, they're all won less than 10 seats.
Right.
So you really kind of have a stalemate with Israel's elections right now.
The problem is the leftists really can't form a government anyway. There's not enough seats for them to do that, unless the hatred for Bibi amongst the right wing actually lends on enough seats that they would actually join the leftist instead. So that's the gamble we have right now: is will the leftists be able to pull it off with Bibi haters and actually establish a leftist government, which is highly unlikely, highly unlikely, or will Bibi Netanyahu be able to pull it off by the strings, right? It's going to be really tough.
Right. One other scenario, which is also very unlikely, but a lot of people are pushing for it now, and that is that Netanyahu retires, because if he leaves the leadership of the Likud party, then all the Bibi people would actually be willing to sit in a right-wing government.
True.
That doesn't look like it's going to happen either, but that is actually a scenario that would work for a coalition. Josh, we're going to talk about a fascinating topic, And that is, a lot of people say, the Jewish people have been here in the land of Israel for, 3,000, 4,000 years. And then other people say, Palestinians have been here since before the Canaanites, things like that. We actually came, and some of this stuff I didn't know either. So fascinating information about who was actually here in this region. Was it always called Palestine? When did it first start becoming called Palestine? And the different peoples. We're going to get into that in just a second. But first, the priestly blessing was declared at the Western Wall in Jerusalem. Josh got to ascend the Temple Mount while listening to the prayers and the priestly blessing and the songs being sung from the Western Wall Plaza. And as we're walking around the Temple Mount, you could still hear all the singing. It was absolutely amazing. And not only that, we got to go up with Rabbi and former Knesset member Yehuda Glick. So we're going to play a clip from Jerusalem right now. Enjoy this. Hello guys, so we're here in Jerusalem for the festival of Passover. Yes, we had to come up on the Temple Mount. We actually ascended the Temple Mount just after they did the priestly blessing at the Western Wall. Privileged to be on the Temple Mount with Rabbi Yehuda Glick, who has a few special words for you from Jerusalem during this season. But it's so special as we're walking around on the Temple Mount, we could hear the singing and the Psalms, singing the Hallel, Psalms 117, and the surrounding Psalms.
Today is the first day of the Omer. Today is the day they bring, as it says in Leviticus 23, when you come to the land and you plant your plants, the very first barley you bring here. But why did they start it on this day? It's a very interesting point. The 16th of Nisan was also the day that the manna stopped falling down from heaven. The manna that they had for 40 years in the desert, it fits on that. Now when we eat bread today, we make a bracha. We make hamotzi lechem min haaretz. But in the desert, they didn't say hamotzi lechem min haaretz. They said hamotzi lechem min hashamayim. That's what they said. But when God said, when you come to the land, I want you to understand that the bread from the land is just like the bread from heaven. It's no difference. So when you go and harvest and you feel you're working in the field, you feel it's your grapes, Hashem says, no. Don't forget to bring the first fruits to the temple. Don't forget to bring the very first. So what they do is the first day, they bring the first barley, the barley raw material. On the 50th day, they bring the bread. The two loaves of bread, the ready-made food that we made. But again, we say, it began with barley, it became bread, and it's all yours. It's all from Hashem. So it began with grapes, and it became wine. Though it's handmade, it's all His. So this is the day we begin bringing the first barley, the first harvest to the offer to the Temple Mount, and we count the 50 days from the beginning until from the reaping, all the way to the bringing of the 2 loaves of bread from wheat. So Baruch Hashem, you came here. I hope you brought your barley with you. The priest there is waiting for your barley, but I'm sure he sees your children who are like olive branches around the table, as it says, right?
Right.
And he's so excited that you're all here, bringing the blessing from the Har Bracha. And the Bracha and Bikurim are all the same letters. They're a very special word. You know that in Hebrew, every letter has a numerical letter, but the Bracha, just like Bechor and Bikurim, the Bet Kaf Resh are the 3 letters that mean that express multiplication. The Bet is 2, the Kaf is 20, and the Resh is 200. So it's Bracha. What does Bracha mean? Bracha means you double, you multiply. And Hashem said, you're going to be the source of bracha to all nations, by children, by land, and through that, you'll be a source of blessing to all nations. So Baruch Hashem, we see that today here we have the bracha of children, we have the bracha of the land, and we have the bracha of all nations. So I think we got it all. That's the home run.
Fantastic to be in Jerusalem, especially with former Knesset member and Rabbi Yehuda Glick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking here, Luke, as we experience these kind of things here in Israel, is there any other country that takes a verses, blessings from the Bible, and takes it to their capital and just shouts it out like reverberating through the entire cities?
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you caught it either, but there was a man right underneath the camera. The camera panned down right at the bottom. There was a man with his hands on top of, I'm assuming, his son's heads, which is something, that's like how the blessing is transmitted.
Yeah.
They were saying the blessing from Deuteronomy 6. Am I right? Deuteronomy 6. But basically the priestly blessing, and he's blessing his sons at the same time, right next to the holiest spot in the entire world.
Obviously, there's holy people around the world, Luke, and they're blessing their sons like that. Around the world, you name it, wherever they are, they're passing on blessing to their sons. But as a nation of people, thousands of people gathering in Jerusalem, literally in public, this is not in their house, and he has his hands on his sons, blessing them in like the courts right there in the Western Wall where the temple used to have been on top. We've got an incredible setting here in Israel. The rest of the world is looking so dark and dim, and people are talking about this and that and war and this and whatever. Here in Israel, we've got it. There's absolutely a beautiful thing that just happened. We're still in the festival of Passover right now, and literally this is what Jerusalem looks like. There's blessings, biblical blessings being shouted out over the top, and the beautiful singing, like you captured it, the beautiful singing there as well of the Psalms, just shouted out all over Jerusalem. We live in amazing days that we could actually witness something like this in our time. Biblical greatness happening in Jerusalem.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience.
Luke, on another level, we bring it down. Okay, now we're back down to earthly level here. When we start talking about Anthony Blinken, it just goes down. Okay.
U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, and he said this about a month ago, but he told his Israeli counterpart the 2-state solution is the best way to ensure Israel's future. Now, on a side note, I saw a poll or a report just before Israel's elections. They asked every single party in Israel, are you for or against the 2-state solution? Or are you for or against the establishment of a Palestinian state?
Right.
And every single party that chose to answer said they were against the establishment of a Palestinian state, against the 2-state solution. There was a couple that abstained, but even like the center and center left and most of the left-wing parties, I think only the Arab parties refused to answer, maybe a couple of the really left-wing parties, but almost every single party answered totally against.
So out of the 120 seats in the Knesset, maybe you have like
about
7 or 8
probably said that, at least said that they were against a 2-state solution.
Yeah.
And now you have the, supposedly Israel's best friend and ally saying 2-state solution is the best way to ensure Israel's future. Now we get a lot of comments on our YouTube channel, get a lot of response, and people, obviously there's always the people out there that are the haters, always the people that are against. And a lot of people say, the Palestinians have been here for centuries and for thousands of years. And, way before one person even said Palestinians were here before the Canaanites, I think, which I'm not sure how you even tell that. Like, that was a long time ago. You're talking about many, many years ago. But we thought we'd dive into this topic. And there's really good information out there, but unfortunately, most people have no idea.
Well, Luke, it's not just even information. It's actually history.
Right.
And what people want to do is they want to just delete that.
Well, they want politics to dictate their worldview instead of history.
Right. When history actually lays, like it's written, there's things that are written that actually documented things from this time to this time to this time that we can go back and look at. So when somebody tells you the Palestinians are the indigenous people of the land of Israel, well, just go look at the history books. Okay, what actually happened?
Right. And I think we knew a lot of this, but just based off the fact that we're here and up close and seeing it so much, meeting Jews, meeting Palestinians, seeing both sides of the conflict and everything. And of course, we're not, against the Palestinians. We want their best, have their best interests in mind as well. But we want to know the truth, right? Okay, so we're going to look at a little bit of information from, a lot of this comes from Daniel Greenglass, hopefully said his name right. In a report to the Jerusalem Post in 2015, he debunks the claim that Palestinians are the indigenous people of Israel. Okay, so we're going to give a couple examples here, and then we're going to get into some really interesting information. It goes all the way back to 1695.
Well, you can go all the way back to 1695, or you can come up to just 3 weeks ago?
Exactly.
Well, that's what we're going to get.
Because everybody knows the Dead Sea Scrolls, right, were discovered.
But they think that's a long time ago,
40s and 50s.
Right.
Did you know that more Dead Sea Scroll fragments were just discovered on March 16th? That was less than 2 weeks ago. More Dead Sea Scroll fragments were discovered.
And those Dead Sea fragments, what did they say? How does this validate our argument? We're talking about history again. These are ancient writings found over 2,000 years old. And they say they're from the book of Zechariah and Haggai, I think is the other one. Literally Bible things that match up with all the other history.
And they span several centuries. So from, we have Dead Sea Scrolls that date from 3rd century BC all the way up to the 1st century AD. You got a 400 span period there. Then basically the Dead Sea Scrolls are documenting Jewish life in Judea at that time frame, which is 2,000 to 2,400 years ago.
Right.
So we have at least that. Okay, let's talk about that's recent history, right?
Okay.
Recent history, 2,400 years ago, we know the Jewish people were here in the land of Israel. Okay, Daniel Greenglass also says there's no records to support the Palestinian narrative. In history, art, and literature, there's no trace at all of any Muslim people referred to by anybody as Palestinians. Josh, I thought of another adventure show that we could do, maybe in the future. There was a museum built, I think within the last 5 years, to document the Palestinian history. Unfortunately, they built a museum and they couldn't find anything to put into it. So I think we need to go find this museum and we'll show it to everyone.
That's actually legit.
They actually built a place. I saw pictures of it, but they couldn't.
There was just nothing there.
They had problems filling it up. Okay, so we need to go find that. But also, I want to show you this book. I brought a little show and tell today. This is The Case for Palestine.
Good book. You should get it. Everybody should order it.
By Aidan O'Connor. Hopefully the camera can see this here. But I thought maybe we should just read maybe 5 or 10 chapters out of this.
Well, just tell us what the chapter titles are first.
See it?
Yeah.
Well, I should tell you a couple chapter titles. Okay. History of the Palestinian people, all evidence of an indigenous Palestinian connection to the land, the legal case for Palestinian rights to the land. There's about 12 chapters in this book, and I would read it to you, but unfortunately, it's...
Somebody put a lot of time and effort into this, guys. You got to give them a round of applause because this is the real story. Whoever did this, this is fabulous. You just did it right. There's just nothing to it. That's all it is. The case for Palestine lies as a complete, just empty lie. There's nothing more to it. If you want to go down deeper into actually what happens, which we're going to do, we're going to tell you guys the story. Where did Palestine ever even come from? How did that end up being here?
Well, when did it first start being called Palestine?
Exactly.
Did you know that when Jordan controlled the West Bank and Egypt ruled in Gaza prior to the 6-Day War, says prior to 1967, there was no mention of Palestinians. I don't think I actually knew that. I probably would have said that they did call them Palestinians.
Right, because Egypt ruled Gaza.
You got Egypt,
and Jordan was over what they call West Bank area.
So at
that time, it was properly called Gaza. West Bank because the West Bank is the West Bank
of the Jordan.
Well, what do you know? It makes sense. So that's what happened there.
So we first hear of Arabs referred to as Palestinians when Egypt's president Nasser established, and Yasser Arafat, right? The Palestine Liberation Organization in 1964.
Which, go ahead and explain why. Okay, the Liberation Organization. We just have to put this in, Luke. The Liberation Organization.
Liberation Organization formed in 1964 when Egypt was occupying Gaza and Sinai and Jordan was occupying the West Bank. So what did they want to liberate?
Liberation.
We showed the map right in the mayor's office of Torah Messiah a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
From the river to the sea. They want to wipe off the Jewish people from the map. Okay, how and when did this area first start being called Palestine?
So the Romans came. This is the first mention of Palestine, Luke, in 135.
You got it.
Romans come in and so the Romans are trying to absolutely obliterate Jewish presence, right? They come in here. It's an all-out assault. Jerusalem is like, because there was such a battle for Jerusalem, the Romans were almost shamed at first because they couldn't just take it so quickly.
Right.
There began this deep-seated anger toward the Jewish people by the Romans, and the Romans absolutely sacked it.
Right.
They destroyed it. They salted it, okay? And when they left, they wanted to leave it like there's a real stab, okay?
Right.
We're not only going to just kill, annihilate, and destroy, we're going to leave a lasting stab here that actually, this is fascinating, Luke, because it still rings today.
Right. Well, it was a slap in the face.
This is the Palestinian thing today, goes all the way back there. They said, this is not Judea anymore. Right. We're going to slap those Judeans in the face, and we're going to rename it, because also you have people that fought against the Romans were strong Judeans. Like they were fighting for Judea to be established as a country. And they attack and they say it's no longer going to be called this because this is what you were fighting for. It's now going to be called Palestine.
Which is a slap in the face because the Philistines, years before that, were one of Israel's arch nemesis, their greatest enemies.
Very true.
So they decided to name it after the Philistines.
That's the reason. It was even more of a smear because they're pulling out Israel's greatest enemy of the past and saying, now we're going to call this Palestine because as a rework of the Philistines.
Okay, so not only that, but we have Arab leaders that actually are on record documenting, saying that there is no such thing as Palestine. There is no such thing as the Palestinian people. In 1936, you may have heard of the Peel Commission. They met with the General Secretary of the Arab Higher Committee, Ani Abd al-Hadi, probably didn't say that right, who testified, quote, "There is no such country as Palestine. Palestine is a term the Zionists invented. There's no Palestine in the Bible. Our country was for centuries part of Syria," which is also true. A lot of the Arabs that are here considered themselves for years as Lower Syria or Little Syria, right?
Yeah.
It is the Zionists who introduced it. That was the General Secretary of the Arab Higher Committee in 1936.
Introduced the idea of Palestine?
Okay, get this. Before the State of Israel was born, the term Palestinians was used by the Jews to refer to themselves and their organizations. You had the Palestine Post, which is today the Jerusalem Post, the Palestine Foundation Fund, Palestine Airways, and the Palestine Symphony Orchestra. But guess what? They were all purely Jewish enterprises.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So actually, in the 1940s, you had term Palestinians and Palestine referring to the Jewish people in the land of Israel.
Basically what we have here, Luke, is a psychological weapon of war. Right. It's been changed. Instead of being like weapons of like actual guns and stuff, they've actually changed. They're trying to change ideology to fight against Israel. And this is actually what's prevailing on the stage today. The Romans started it with renaming, talking about rewriting history. This is a big problem in America right now. That's what's happened in this attack against Israel. They're trying to take away what the truth is, the true history, and they're rewriting it in a made-up story. Mm-hmm. And that's really what we're dealing with right now. Luke, we want to go to a guy that actually came.
Yeah, it gets even, like, this is even more fascinating than what we've talked about so far. So hang on, guys, okay? Adrian Reeland. I think he was from Holland, somewhere in Europe. So I probably didn't say his name right either. But he went to Palestine. It was known as Palestina in 1695. I think he went in 1695. He wrote a book, came out in 1696. He was a scholar, geographer, cartographer, spoke perfect Hebrew, Arabic, and ancient Greek, as well as European languages. Okay, just Say that right there. I'm going to guess he was a pretty smart guy.
Go ahead, trust him.
Yeah. So in 1695, he was sent on a sightseeing tour to Israel, at that time known as Palestina. He surveyed approximately 2,500 places where people lived that were mentioned in the Bible or the Mishnah. He wrote a book about his findings. He had a super organized and documented way of documenting everything. Basically took a census of the people of Israel and like did a survey in the area, right? Okay, here's his three big findings. Three big findings by a huge scholar from 1695. Number one, not one settlement in the land of Israel has a name that is of Arabic origin.
That's fascinating.
Should we say that again? Not one settlement in the land of Israel has a name that is of Arabic origin. Most of the settlement names originate in Hebrew, Greek, Latin, or Roman languages, which we know the Romans changed a lot of the original names, like Shechem,
right?
They changed it to Nablus, which was Neapolis, right?
Neapolis, yeah.
Or Neapolis, right? In fact, till today, except for Ramla, not one Arabic settlement has an original Arabic name. I'm guessing we're going to get some comments about that one. Okay.
Hey, if we do get comments and you guys doubt this, okay, we're just going to
Go
have to do
look it
another
up.
show and actually go and show
maybe
people
we'll
the
go check it
names
out.
of the cities and how their former names are connected to the Jewish names on site.
Because a lot
It's
of the
huge
Arab
thing.
towns, even in the area today, preserve this. That's
The
why
ancient
Joseph's
names.
tomb is in Shechem. Joshua and Caleb's tomb is in the, I don't remember the name, but an Arab village close to Ariel. It's like the same.
named
Yeah,
after it, yeah.
What is it? Eliezer, that's buried right across in an Arab town by Itamar over
Right,
here.
yeah.
So they preserve biblical sites.
It's exactly right.
Okay, second point by Adrian Reland. Most of the land was empty, desolate, and the inhabitants few in number. Sounds like Mark Twain. Mostly concentrated in Jerusalem, Akko, Tzfat, which is in the north, Jaffa, close to Tel Aviv, Tiberias, also in the north, and Gaza. Most of the inhabitants were Jews and the rest Christians. There was a few Muslims, mostly nomadic Bedouins. Nablus, known as Shechem, was exceptional because they had 120 people who were members of a Muslim family, and also about 70 Samaritans, which are still here today.
Okay, so we're going to go back to 1600 with this.
Personal story real quick.
Yeah.
I saw an actual photograph, an aerial photograph of Nablus from 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Black and white, area. You know how Nablus today, there's at least several 100,000 people that live down there, right? It's like huge spread out city. I saw a photograph of that exact area, and there was literally, I could probably count like 10 houses.
Oh, yeah.
It was crazy.
No, you can actually Google it and find it.
That entire town has been built up just in the last 100 years.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you can Google that picture. Just Google it. I think it's 1913.
Right.
Is when that picture is taken.
I saw the actual, like an original photograph.
Really?
It was crazy.
That's
okay. Final point by Adrian Reland is that no Palestinian heritage or Palestinian nation was found here in the land of Israel. His book totally contradicts any theory claiming a Palestinian heritage or a Palestinian nation. And this is what he found by an actual scholar and professional that came to the land of Israel in 1695.
And you may say late 1695, maybe like a little bit too far back ago. But okay, what we're doing right now is we're saying that the history did not go back that far.
Right.
If they say that the ancient peoples, no, it's absolutely a flat out fib. It's not true. It's false. Judeans go back. The ancestry here is Israeli. It goes back Jewish. Time and time again, history. Let's just follow the line of history, and that's what we got. Luke, we've got so much more to cover here, but we're
we didn't even
running
hardly
flat
get
out
through
of
it.
time.
There's a member of the PLO that actually said the Palestinian people doesn't exist. So much more we could dive into, guys. I would love to know what you think. Please reach out to us, leave us comments, because this maybe might have to be a part 2, an ongoing discussion, but we're also going to get that out there and continue showing it to you so you can see for yourselves.
That's right.
But in the meantime, be strong, be courageous, and be the voice of Joshua and Caleb in your generation.
I believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Hi guys, if you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We also have tons more incredible content straight from Israel's heartland, which you can find completely free at joshuaandcaleb.com. If you're interested in signing up for a life-changing volunteer program in Israel's heartland, you can go to serveisrael.com. We host Christians from all over the world to help plant trees, harvest grapes, prune vines, and basically help farmers all over Judea and Samaria, all while experiencing the land and people of Israel in a way that you're never going to get on a 10-day tour. Just go to serveisrael.com to find out more information.